The Page Center at Penn State is dedicated to integrity in public communication. And we've started to move into the territory of talking about how one builds that. And you just mentioned the culture of the firm. How do you build a culture that's based on integrity and a culture that stands for the values that you think are important?
Well, I go right back to one of our big clients, J&J, and the Credo. And I think you have to establish in a public way what it is you stand for. And then it's by your actions that you demonstrate it. So, it's no longer enough to just consider that public relations is about communications. It's actually about advice on what to do, and then an elegant explanation of why you're doing it. So it's the both. And I think, Larry Foster gets that completely because it was the action on Tylenol well explained, the both. That's the basis. And so how do I build that at Edelman? Well, I try to walk the talk. I blog, as you know, regularly. I make a big virtue out of seeing mid-level people. I run on the Edelman New York team for the J.P. Morgan Chase race in the park, and I have 90 people over afterwards, and we have beers and talk baseball and or fashion. And some who like baseball, some who like fashion. It's good to have daughters. I know nothing but a little, and you have to, in a sense, live a very public life, and I think. So leading from the front is important, and demonstrating yourself, but also making sure that others in the firm are given leeway to do things interesting. So we have a thing called Edelman Escape. People can go for after being at the firm for 10 years. They go on 2 weeks paid sabbatical, and then they write about it and they blog about it. And when one person went to Africa and helped in Rwanda, and these are stories that express a certain kind of conscience that I want to be part of the firm. Or similarly, it gets around if you quit a client because you've been abused. You've offered advice, you've been screamed at, whatever else, you at some point have to say, no mas, that's enough. Roberto Duran, we'll take our advice elsewhere, and that's fine.
You mentioned the J&J Credo. What would your observation be of corporate America, or not corporate America, corporations, I should say, global corporations is what I mean to say, in terms of their commitment to a public set of values and a willingness to inculcate them throughout their organization and live up to them?
I think, Roger, there's a continuum. I think that some still believe in the sort of Friedman theory of, I'm here to maximize profit for shareholders. I will pay lip service through my corporate philanthropy to other activities, and I do like being, honored at the right dinners, but that's the minimalist approach. And then there's another approach which says that the world has changed and that the expectations of business are now to be a partner in society, and so that colloquium will continue with the ultimate decision to be made by the marketplace. I heard a wonderful comment from Ian Davis, who's the former chairman of McKinsey, and he said, it's not a matter of shareholder versus stakeholder, it's a matter of long-term versus short-term. His view is that long-term shareholder maximization is what companies ought to be about, not short-term, and that if that's the case, then business and society makes eminent sense, and that one cannot possibly consider a world where you just pay maximum bonuses and don't consider the societal context or otherwise.
And there is some evidence that, as you mentioned, I think, some companies get that, and yet we continue to see horrific examples of companies that don't.
The problem is that business is judged by the lowest common denominator.
Yeah.
And it seems to me, in the interests of business and in the interests of the PR people behind the scene to be pushing, C-suite agenda, to have business seen in a broader manner. And also, frankly, to criticize as necessary those who break those behavioral rules, because otherwise it's sort of seen as sort of nodding to, as opposed to really changing
Right.
your behavior.